Good morning. My name is Ted Gardner, and I'm an interviewer for the Library of Congress Oral History Project, which is so capably handled here at our Public Library of Cincinnati. And Dennis Daly, historian, is our videographer and runs this program so smoothly. This morning we have the honor and the joy of talking to Wilbur Reis, our EIS, of Montford Heights, Cincinnati. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. And Wilbert, where were you born?
I was born in Hastings, Nebraska.
Hastings, Nebraska. Oh, golly.
1932.
1932. And did you go to start out elementary school there?
Started out in a little one-room schoolhouse, the old tin schoolhouse. In fact, it just finally fell down about 2 years ago. It'd been there as a landmark for all these years.
I'll be darned, yeah.
And it always kind of amazes me, today's world, they talk about these kids in their schools, they got brand new schools to go to, and the teachers don't do this. I said, I went through, well, actually 7 grades of school in a one-room schoolhouse, and the teacher taught us all.
Right.
And I can even read and write.
How about that?
Yeah.
What about your family?
Well, I got a brother and two brothers and a sister, and they're still living in Nebraska.
They are.
My parents are gone.
Was yours a farm family?
Yes, we lived out on a farm about 12 miles out from Hastings.
Okay. Growing up in that kind of an atmosphere and environment that is really something special, and I'm very familiar with that. And there's something that younger generations that live in the city don't quite understand these days, you know.
That's right.
But now, how about, you said the 7th grade, you went through in that schoolroom?
The first 6 years of my schooling, I was the best kid in my class, because I was the only one.
Oh.
And my 7th year, another family moved in, so they had a boy, but he was in the 8th grade, so the teacher combined the 2 grades. So I graduated out of the 8th grade through 7 years.
Well, for heaven's sake.
And went into high school.
And there were no girls in the school?
Well, yeah, there were girls.
Oh, there were girls.
But there just wasn't anybody in my class.
Well, I'll be darned. Isn't that interesting?
So, you know, when you're out there and there probably wasn't over 10 or 12 children in the school all the time.
Isn't that something?
But we had the enjoyment of carrying in the coal for the teacher and going out to the windmill and bringing in the water.
How about that?
So, and you know what, it didn't hurt me one bit.
Absolutely not. And boy, the wind blows across that country too, doesn't it?
Oh, yes.
I should say, I know, because my dad was born and raised in Edgar, Nebraska. You know where
Okay,
Edgar,
yeah.
Clay
Oh,
County?
Sure.
Sure.
Sure enough.
Long time ago. Well, anyway, okay, then the transition from that little school to high school, how about that?
Went to Roseland High School. Graduated out of one of the biggest classes there, which was 26.
How about that? Yeah.
But
did you have any special interests, hobbies or anything like that in high school, or activities?
Not really. I was always in music. I can't sing, but I still was in the music classes.
Good
And
for you.
junior and senior years, we always had plays, and I was always participated in them and enjoyed doing the school paper and things like that.
Oh,
so
that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, that and being again in a small environment, somehow you got attention that was different from being in a massive school where they
Well, you knew everybody.
Yeah, you knew everybody, and the teachers knew you and had a personal interest in you.
In fact, the 30th of May now we'll have what they call a high school alumni association. We only have it every 3 years, and everybody comes because that way, you know, you
Get
get
enough
quite a group
people.
together. Yeah.
Sure.
So it's neat.
Teachers and alums,
Yeah.
and that's great. Well, that has a special feel about it, I should say. Well, Wilbur, Reis, what happened after high school? Did you have a direction or a thought in mind of what you wanted to do?
No, not really. You know, back in those days, you didn't really even think about college. Too many people, not unless you had a specialty or something. I still stayed there on the farm and helped Dad farm part of the time, but I always had hay fever real bad, so then I started working for the State Highway Department.
Oh,
So I was a heavy equipment operator between then and when I went into service.
I see.
But I still always helped out on the farm.
Everybody has certain moments in his life that he never forgets when it happened and where he was. Now, you were a little bit younger, but the 7th of December 1941 is a day that everyone seems to remember.
Oh yeah.
Where were you and how did you get the word?
Well, I can remember very plainly. I was out in our yard and my sister came out. She had been in the house and heard it on the radio.
Yeah.
And come out and, of course, you're kind of like, well, what's this mean?
Yeah, right.
Didn't really understand it, but
Sure.
that's how.
And where's Pearl Harbor?
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't know that too.
But I can remember that very plainly.
Well, that is really something. And in those days, of course, radio was it. Radio and the telephone. That was the only way of communication that we had.
In fact, I think I was 16 years old before we ever had electric.
Really?
Oh yeah. We didn't get electric until 48.
My goodness. Yeah, because the rural electrification plan came in the 1930s, as I remember.
But see, we didn't get any of that until after the war had kind of
I see.
quieted down.
Boy, oh boy. So you had lanterns and
Oh yeah, lantern, kerosene lamps,
kerosene lamps. Yeah. How about that?
and an outhouse.
And an outhouse.
Oh yeah.
Well, now, okay, so you were 16 at that time, and of course, so you still had some time to go. But when did you enter the military, and how did that come about?
Well, my friends and neighbors sent me a letter and said, we have chosen you to appear on a certain date to take your physical.
Good old draft
Yeah,
board.
yeah, that was in September 1952 is when I went into service.
All right.
So
And you were 18 years old then?
no, I was 21.
21.
What, 20?
52.
20.
That's right, 52. Yeah.
I wasn't.
You were 20.
Yeah, I was.
1932. All right. Where were you first sent?
Please.
Where were you first
Oh, Camp
sent?
Chaffee, Arkansas. That's where we had bivouac down there and everything. Not basic training.
Sure.
And when we did have our bivouac training, it was snowing, so we was out there. So we had a lot of fun.
Welcome to the Army. Huh?
Right.
How about that?
Good old training.
I should say so. Now, were you sent on maneuvers, or were you were just doing basic training?
Basic training.
In Louisiana there.
The one thing I can remember about basic training or bayonet practice was a head man was Sergeant Slaughter. And I always thought, well, that's kind of a
Hey, that's
basic name, Sergeant Slaughter. He was a bayonet man.
how you doing?
No, when I was in basic training towards the end there, they want you to take all these different trainings. I signed up for airborne and everything, took all the tests. To me, it was always a waste because everybody in our unit, we all headed right to Korea. Lieutenants, sergeants, no matter what, the whole group.
Mm-hmm.
So I always kind of wondered why did they waste their time even letting us take these different tests and everything, but they did.
Yeah. Well, now, you went directly from Louisiana to Korea? Or?
Well, no, we got a 2 weeks, 3 weeks furlough.
Yeah.
And then from there, yeah, we went directly to Korea.
I'll be darned. And how were you transported? By sea or by air or what?
By sea.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we got on a slow boat to China, Korea.
Right.
We was on that thing, took us about 30 days.
Okay. Oh my.
We left out of Seattle, about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, beautiful sunshiny day, and before sunset we hit rough waters. I mean, they weren't just flowing, they were rough. Water was coming over the top.
Right.
And when the front would go down, the rudders would come out, and the whole ship would shake.
Sure.
And we went almost 2 days like that. And you talk about some sick boys. There were some. Oh man. My oldest brother had told me. He says, if you don't do anything else, he says, eat. And that's what I done, and I didn't get sick.
Good for you.
But
Close.
Oh yeah.
Oh my. And had you? Was that your first encounter with the ocean?
Yep. Yes.
You
Never.
You hadn't been to the coast.
Never been to the coast. No.
Be
Just
darned. Isn't that something?
little old farm boy. You don't get too far away from home in those
That's-
days.
That's right. Well, I'll bet you were amazed, weren't you, at the situation you
Oh,
were
yeah.
involved in there? Now, coming out of Nebraska, of course, not one of the most populated states in the Union. Were there other Nebraska boys with you? Or?
At that time, there was 6, 7, about 8,
Mhm.
8 boys in my community that I knew. Really was only in basic training with 2 of them. The rest of them they was in different units.
Right.
But there was about 8 of us left out of there at that time.
So you, there you were on the high seas, and as you say, it took you about 30 days to get across.
Yep,
to.
yeah.
Now, where did you go in on the other side?
Went into Incheon,
Incheon.
got in there late in the evening, and had to go in off of these, whatever they call them, I don't know,
Oh, the small
land,
LCIs
land, yeah.
and so forth.
and we got in there, and it was cold and windy. Of course, this was in February, 1st
Oh
of
my
February.
God. Worst time of the year.
And got in there, and they got us all lined up and everything. And we thought, oh man, we're getting in line here. We're going to have some chow. Well, ended up we got what they called the Mickey Mouse boots, for winter boots. So the next line we got into was we got chow, but it was all sea rations, and that was for the next 2 days riding the train.
Mm.
From there, they loaded us onto the train, and it was not what you'd call a luxury train.
It wasn't a Pullman.
Wooden seats, and half the windows were out.
Oh my golly.
No heat,
Yeah.
and probably one of the worst sea rations you can get is sausage and gravy.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't be so bad if you could heat it up, but we had no means of heating it, so you had to eat it cold.
Oh, goodness sakes.
So that was our introduction to Korea.
Welcome to Korea.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Orient. Well, you must have been amazed at what you saw, the people and the countryside and everything.
Oh yeah.
Hearing a foreign language and what was your outfit supposed to do? Were you infantry or
No, I was with the 7th Division, 48th Artillery,
artillery?
105 Hauser
Mhm.
Division. So that's where I headed for.
Right. And but you had been well trained in artillery, had you, before you got
Not
there?
really, no. Basic training was basically infantry,
Yeah.
most of it.
Marching.
Very little artillery training.
Right.
It's like everything else. What you train for isn't what you end up doing
That's
most of the
exactly
time.
right.
It seems like.
Oh yeah, typical military,
But,
I would say. Well, as you've alluded to already, the weather conditions and everything. So, what did you say? 2 days on the train?
Yes.
From Incheon to
Up to, them names have slipped by me. Busan and I keep wanting to say Incheon, not Incheon. That's where we came into.
Yeah.
But anyhow, we was up there towards
What-
old Baldy and up in that area.
What kind of accommodations did you have?
Well, the unit we went into, they was living in bunkers, so it was,
Right out in the open?
well, they was in the hillsides,
Oh, I see.
and so that was basically, they was nice to stay in because it was warm. You had a little pot-bellied stove in there, and of course you had dirt floors and all that, but they were nice to sleep in.
How about that? At least you could heat up your food, huh?
Yeah. Well, you had a mess hall then that they could
Oh,
go
I see.
to. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, on the train was the only time I really ever had sea rations, all the time I was over there.
Well, that's all about that. Well, there you are now, and what was your first experience with the enemy, for example?
Well, with being in the artillery division, you really don't see them.
Mm-hmm.
It's all, you're firing,
Sure, you're firing from
firing at them
distance.
and everything. So, then that first month I was over there, I was actually assigned to the, a battery on the 105 houses, and so that was quite an experience. You had to set up everything and load everything, and
That's a big gun, too.
you know what we was firing?
No.
We was firing ammunition left over from the Second World War.
Oh, my goodness.
So sometimes you would fire and it would premature explode
Right out there, just
right out in front of you, and that wasn't good either.
Right out of the
But
muzzle.
that's what we were using.
My goodness sakes. Were there injuries from that sort of thing, or?
No, we fortunately never had any backlash from that. That was
Sure.
good. But
How about your equipment? How about your clothing and your GI issue and so forth?
always had clothes to wear. Yeah, yeah. I was. One of the things that they said is that you weren't allowed to go overseas until you had GI glasses, and you can see that without glasses, I'm not too efficient. Well, I went into service and I got out of the service, and I never ever had GI glasses.
Really?
Never ever
How about that?
issued any.
For heaven's sake.
I don't know how I slipped through the cracks that way, but I never had a pair of.
Well, isn't that something?
But
That didn't handicap you anyway, did it?
no, oh no.
Well, tell us, anything come to mind, any humorous incidences with your fellow soldiers, or funny experiences in camp?
Well, like I said, that first month I was over there, I was, basically assigned to the Hauser division, and that after the first month they were going to make a move. So we had to load up everything you had. You loaded up on the back of your deuce and a half, and you hooked up your Hausers behind them and everything. And at that particular time is when they were switching over to the new GMC equipment and everything. It so happened that our battery was the only one that had the old International deuce and a half. We hadn't got a new one yet. And the sergeant in charge of our group was rotating, and he was leaving, so they didn't have a truck driver. They wanted to know if anybody could drive a truck, and I said, I drove tractors and trucks for the State Department and things like that. I said, I can drive a truck. So they kind of said, well, there's a new kid on the block,
Hey.
And this was like the end of February going into March, and it's all your roads over there, they was thawing out, so you had these real wet spots and everything. And we were the last ones in the group, there's 6. Something about them new GMCs, when they'd go up that hill and hit that bog, they'd quit. They couldn't get through there. And they tried it 2 or 3 different times and all that, and I finally got enough courage, and I said, I can make it through there with this old International. It didn't have automatic shift, and it had the regular shift and everything on it. And they, same thing, they kind of said, well, okay, show us.
Yeah.
You know what I did? I went up through there, and then I backed down and pulled the other people through there.
Oh, good for you.
And I always said that was kind of, I think, my stepping stone to, within 2 weeks, the ammo train commander came to me and wanted to know if I'd be his Jeep driver.
Oh.
And I always just kind of thought maybe that was what got me into that position.
Mm-hmm.
Because,
That was pretty good duty, wasn't it?
oh yeah, except one thing. If it was raining in the evenings at night, you knew you was going to be up all night, because that's when the Chinese would,
Oh.
they always had you just automatically knew you was going to have incoming rounds.
Hmm.
But other than that, no, it was a good duty,
Yeah.
very good duty.
And you got to, who was your commanding officer then?
I'm thinking Hamilton,
Was this? No.
Captain Hamilton.
So this was an artillery,
And I don't know who was on up.
Yeah.
I don't have that.
but I mean, was your commander a bird colonel or a lieutenant colonel, or you remember the rank?
The one, well, the bird colonel we had came in after Hamilton. That was Loxley. Because I always figured he came right out of ROTC someplace. He'd been a teacher and then he had to be assigned over there because he'd see you from here across the street and he'd throw you a salute.
Oh boy.
He didn't wait for you to salute him. He'd throw you a salute.
Oh, you would. How about that?
But he was down the line a ways. But the only bad part about him was the experience with him was we had to make another move, and the position he put us on, bright early morning, open side of the valley.
Hmm.
You know what kind of position that puts you
boy.
into?
Oh boy.
We hadn't been there an hour, and we had incoming rounds.
Yeah.
I never did really forget him or forgive him for that.
Right. Right.
We was only there, well, we was there for the day, and that's when I was still driving the Jeep then for the ammo train commander, and I told him, they told us we all were supposed to dig in. I told him, I said, I'm not digging in over here. I said, we're like sitting ducks.
Exposing yourself. Sure.
And fortunately, I had the Jeep then, and I went down in the bottom of the valley there, waiting to see what was going to take place, because I knew we was going to, any time they fired, then we knew that our trucks were going to have to go out and start hauling ammunition.
Hmm.
And that was one time that I kind of defied the authority and said, nope, not going to dig in over here. By 4 o'clock that afternoon, we lost the whole mess crew. They'd all got wiped out and everything.
Oh gosh.
And we finally got off the side of that hill. But I said I never did understand
Mm-hmm.
why you would do that.
Yeah. You wonder. You wonder. Aside from the 105s, did you carry a rifle or a BAR or
I
anything
had
like that?
a BAR 45.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Carried that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But no, the fun part too was being out at night like that. You was driving with your blackout lights,
Mm-hmm.
and most of your roads over there were built not more than about 1 lane wide, and wherever they went, they just went straight down 4 or 5 feet. So driving blackout lights and everything was an experience too.
I
So
should say.
we survived and made it through.
Well, look at you, I should say.
But that was kind of just, it was a neat experience. I mean, I can't say that I can't ever say that I was unhappy
Mm-hmm.
being in the service. It was an experience just
I understand.
being
I
there.
felt the same way. Yeah. Well, the situation in Korea, as we talked about before, was it was different. It just had a different feeling about it, and as a matter of fact, our whole nation felt differently about it because of the propaganda from the media and so forth, and the way the government reacted. Did you feel like you had adequate support over there? And
far as I knew. I
Yeah.
mean, we, you know, I don't think we really heard a lot about what was going on in the States. I mean, it was just we were there to do our thing, and
That's
we
right.
done it.
That's right. How about entertainment? Were there USO groups that came around or anything like
Yeah,
that?
after the so-called truce, or whatever you want to call it, was
Mhm.
signed, there was different groups that came in. In fact, I got to see Marilyn Monroe.
How about that?
And she, you know, no matter what people say about her, she put on a wonderful show.
Yeah.
I mean, she really went all out as far as her singing and dancing
Right.
and everything. And I got close enough. I even got a couple pictures.
Oh, good.
So,
And she was so beautiful.
oh
too.
yeah,
Oh, my
we.
golly.
The only entertainment that I really didn't get excited about afterwards too was the Red Cross gals would come in for a day, and they'd want to play games like stick the tail on a donkey and stuff like that. And then I think the hold up on that was in the evenings, and they'd party with the officers. Of course, we didn't get involved in that, but we got cookies and coffee. That was
Wow.
that was always kind of a, when they say that, well, the Red Cross girls are coming, I say okay, but no, it was okay. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm being bad.
No, I understand, and you know those things you remember, and with that sort of an experience, you're unique. How long were you over there, Wilbur?
Just about 14 months, I guess.
14 months,
Some
wow.
13, 14.
Yeah, that was a long
Mhm.
time. Long time.
But-
Did you? What was your mission? Did you move across the peninsula, or what?
No, we didn't. We really didn't make any big moves. It was, we basically stayed in the same areas
I see.
because we, with the with the artillery, we
That
basically
long range.
yeah.
Sure.
So yeah, we did not make any big moves forward or backward. It was kind of like a standstill at that time.
Mhm. Did you have contact with other units?
Not a whole lot. No, we had. Well, as far as you mentioned, ask about a couple, any more of the boys from back home. There was a couple of my buddies who was in an ACAC unit. They was 2 miles behind me, and they'd come up and visit once in a while, stuff like that. But
Oh, that was great.
the only thing is see, they automatically got 4 points a month. Well, I only got 4 points a month. We had incoming rounds.
Mm.
So they went over after I did and got to go home before I did.
How about
So that was a kind of a, well, it has a plus and a minus.
yeah, right.
I was telling Dennis earlier, we can get to that later. If it hadn't have been that way, I would never been in Cincinnati. So
Is that right? Okay.
we'll get to that later, I'll tell you.
All right. Well, I was in the Navy, and of course, being on ship, pretty confined area, you know. But I've always been in wonder of you fellas who had boots on the ground, and you know, you were out there in the bad weather, and you were up against the enemy. Did you ever see the Chinese?
Nope, never.
Never saw them, and
Nope,
never had them in your sights.
never. Only thing-
Now, were there North Koreans? Were they involved? Did you see them as
well,
enemy?
that's who really was your enemy, was the North Koreans.
That was it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was, they talked about different times where some of them infiltrated through, but if you didn't know who they were, they could go on through without even knowing.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
But
They
we
had-
never really had any, fortunately, no contact.
I
personally.
see.
The only thing is they just shot their rounds into us.
Sure, sure.
As long as them babies are singing, you're okay. But if they stop singing, then you better look.
You were in trouble.
Yeah, yeah. You want them just to be whistle, keep whistling.
Did they have artillery like yours?
Well, they always said they were inferior to us, but if you watched their pattern where those shots were coming in, they had some pretty good equipment because they could put it right down the line.
Yeah.
So I think they had good equipment.
And of course, they were supplied mainly by the communist Chinese, weren't they?
Yeah.
And that equipment was, I don't know. Did that come from Russia? Did that come from the Soviet Union?
I have not a clue.
Yeah, right. Well,
We probably supplied it somewhere along the line. We probably made it, sold it, and it came back around and they shot it at us.
I know. It's very ironic, isn't it? Yes. Well, tell us some more funny stories, any personal things, any funny times that happened that come to mind.
Not really. It was just kind of a daily routine of doing everything. Well, getting back to before they signed a truce, so that night, I think they signed that, 11 o'clock at night or whatever it was. We probably got rid of more ammunition the last 2 to 3 hours than we had for 3 or 4 weeks before that, because the commanding officers they had a contest to see who could fire the last round and still be within the limits of the truce.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole valley, I mean, you couldn't even see for the smoke.
Really?
They were just firing them. But I always said, that's kind of sad too, because hopefully wherever that rounds were going, nobody got hurt.
Yeah.
But it was one of those nights that it was one big foggy, smoky valley.
How about that?
But that was part of the game. But then after that, I mean, we moved to another area, of course, back a ways. And I had the opportunity to take over as supply sergeant. So that was kind of neat. And then they started building Quonset huts over there. So I had a nice building to stay in, and well, I stayed right in the same quarters who I had to, and everything. So that was, like I said, my whole time in the service, I can't say that I had any bad times. I always think back to is I had KP one time when I was in basic training. Never ever had it on the ship. There were certain people they assigned to that. Never ever had it when I was overseas. I had KP one time in 2 years, and that's pretty good.
That's pretty darn good.
So I guess
I think it's interesting how you pointed out, because of your growing up experience on the farm and dealing with
the heavy
machinery,
equipment,
equipment,
with
so
the
forth.
state.
Were you mechanical? Could you work on the engines or anything like that?
Never did work on engines, no. But I could, tear down and put together anything else. I just never worked on engines. To this day, I don't work on engines. But
well, now let's see. The truce came when, in 1953?
yeah, in July 10th, 13th, I don't know, someplace in July there. Yeah, I get it down in there, someplace.
So there you were having the fireworks show, firing everything
I might have
off.
it written down here someplace if I look. But yeah, they fired ammunition off like.
Of course, there was a lot of celebration and
Oh yeah.
happiness and all that good stuff. We're going home, got the points.
No, like I said, my time in the service was good. I don't want to go back and do it again, but if I had to, I would.
Thank goodness that's passed. How about mail? Did you get regular mail from home and so forth?
I always wrote to at least a half a dozen girls, so I always had
Good for you.
mail coming in.
Good for you.
I always wrote to my parents once a week. Never ever missed writing to them, keep them informed.
Save those letters too.
But I thought I had it written down here what day that was.
Well, and
It was in July
it
anyhow.
was in July of '53, and so then, was there a period of time that you had to wait before you got transferred to home, or?
Yeah, I didn't get out of the out of there until probably yeah, I left. I didn't leave until March in '54.
Oh, really?
I was there another 6 months.
Oh, for heaven's
Yeah.
sake. Well, now that was a more or less just a sitting around period?
Well, I was supply sergeant.
Yeah.
No, we stayed busy.
Kept you busy.
Yeah, they always had stuff going on and things going, and a lot of cleanup and everything. We was in an area where, which was kind of ironic. We had minefields all around us. In the wintertime, this one sergeant would go out hunting pheasants in these minefields. And I said, well, I don't believe so. I'm not going with you today.
Oh, God.
I'll take my chances and stay right here. But there were just goofy things like that went on.
Right, right.
But
I hope you didn't get hurt.
we, no. We had, this one captain came in. He was in charge, and of course, see, once I got in to be in the ammo train command and was jeep driver, and then the supply sergeant, then I was in what they call service battery. So we served all the other batteries. We picked up the food, we picked up the supplies, and all that. Well, this old boy, he was an old timer, so he knew all the connections. Anything that we wanted, we could get. Food, supplies, or anything like that. So and then the one neat part about that was too, is that he told the mess hall crew, he said, you're in charge. I don't want to have anything to do with you. So we could go there and get coffee and whatever, any time of the day. We didn't have to wait until 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock. If you went through the line in the morning, you wanted scrambled eggs, fried eggs or whatever, they'd fix them for you. And it was just one of those deals where he said, you're on your own, guys, do what you want to, and that's the way they run it. So we ate. I was probably heavier then than I ever been in my life. So, but I don't know. I was, like I said, I was supply sergeant then, and I just stayed busy. And
you had to keep records. And,
oh yeah,
and
yeah.
that sort of thing.
And same thing there. The captain I had then, he said, you're in charge. I could have bought a tank. He said, don't come to me. He says, if you think we need it, get it.
How about that? Well, that's very good, because.
And of course, part of one of my jobs was, which I really didn't like too well, but there was a couple of the officers that got some extra guns and stuff, and they'd come to me, and I had to wrap them to send them home, because we'd get this, supplies would come and they wrapped in paper, what you couldn't x-ray through, whatever they call it. So I'd have to wrap all this stuff, and I even think today, I said, you know, that was wrong, but they was in charge.
That's right.
I never ever sent anything home for myself that way. I just would not take the chance. But I said, so that's, yeah, I always had plenty to do.
Well, see, that's wonderful. Your upbringing and your background and your training as a boy and into manhood with your wonderful parents and everything. Now, you said you had two sisters?
One sister and two
One
brothers.
sister and two brothers.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was a nice size family, I should say. Are they still with you? I mean, you still have your brothers and
Yeah,
sisters?
they all live out in Nebraska.
Oh,
But
they're still out there.
I just went back a month ago. My youngest brother's wife passed away. She was 65.
Oh, dear.
My wife passed away 18 months ago. My oldest brother's wife passed away 14 years ago, and she was 65. So all three of us brothers have lost our wives.
Oh, for goodness.
It's, I don't know,
Yeah.
I told my one brother when I was out there, I said, I don't know what you done when you was young. I said, I didn't do anything wrong. You must have done something to bring this about.
Oh, dear.
But
And they were also young, too.
Yeah.
Too young to, oh dear. Well, so there you were. The truce had been signed. You had another 6 months before you came back in March of '54. Tell us about that, coming back and.
Well, the same thing. I got on one of them wash tubs to come home in. I didn't get a flyback. In fact, putting it all except one guy, or those 8, I think it was, they all went over after I did, came back before I did because they flew.
Mm-hmm.
But I was on the old wash tub coming home again, and we came into California out there. Kind of the same thing there. You got in line, you thought you was going to get fed food. No, you didn't get fed food. You got assigned what train car you was going to get on. So we was on another train there for, it was either 3 or 4 days getting into Colorado Springs.
Good heavens.
I think, well, it was every little town you'd stop at, it was a milk train.
Mm-hmm.
They'd stop and unload and do their things.
Sure.
So they just choop, 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 then you'd chug on.
Yeah.
So we was 3 or 4 days getting back to Camp Carson, Arkansas. And then I also remember we got in there about 3 in the afternoon and they said, too late to process, got to wait till morning. So that was another deal. You waited until the next day. And that was one of the only times in my life that I ever hitchhiked. There was one guy, it was 2 buddies of mine from Hastings and myself, and this one other guy was going to northern Nebraska. So he took us about halfway home and dropped us off out on Highway 6 in the middle of about 200 miles from Hastings. And we stood there for a while, and about a half hour later, a couple guys come by and they pulled over and stopped. You want to ride? Yeah. They took us all the way into Hastings. They was passing their bottle back and forth, but they got us into Hastings. That's the only time I ever hitchhiked in my life.
Isn't that something? How about that? All right, now you're home, and what transpired then? The transformation from the military back to peacetime.
I went back and worked for the State Highway Department again.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I could reverse back and tell you when I was out there in Colorado, it was the same thing out in Colorado. I had absolutely nothing to do. But as I told Dennis, I called him John earlier, you remember John Daly, the golfer. Anyhow, I got in the States 6th of April. If I got in the States the 1st of April, I'd have got out in 21 months.
Mm-hmm.
Another ruling, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So there I am, assigned out there, and nothing to do, no assignment, no nothing. I just was hanging out.
Mm-hmm.
And the couple of guys I was assigned with out there, they were from out west there, and they rode the bucking Broncos. When there's one dude ranch up there at above Colorado Springs, had a rodeo on Sunday for their guests. So we'd go up on Sunday mornings so they could sign up to ride the bucking Broncos, or we'd get up early enough and we'd watch all these city slickers trying to get on their horses. So that was entertainment for us. She was asking about entertainment. Anyhow, we passed this Ohio car on the way up. There was 4 girls in it. And I had this goofy horn on my car and honked it at them. And they got up too late to go on the morning ride. They were just arriving. So we were sitting there on the corral fence waiting, and they walked up and started talking, and one thing led on to another, and we went up and went dancing and took them sightseeing and everything 4 times that week while they were there. And as plain as can be, I can remember it as plain as can be, coming home, back to camp that night, I told them guys, I said, I'm going to go out and marry that girl someday. And so we wrote back and forth, and a year later she mentioned something about, well, if you want to come out to Cincinnati, I'll show you around. Well, I've been here ever since.
So you came to Cincinnati well over 50 years ago.
Oh yeah, yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, I've been out here since '55.
be darned, yeah. Well, now that's interesting, and so when coming to Cincinnati, did you get married out there, or you got married here in town?
Here.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
she was here, from here.
She was from here.
Oh yeah, she was
yes.
born and raised here.
Right, right. Well, I don't know if you knew this or not, but there is a wonderful man in retirement now by the name of Elmer Reis, and he was an assistant chief of police here in Cincinnati
No,
for many years.
no relatives.
No relatives.
I could have some long-tailed relatives because my grandfather and part of his brothers and cousins came out of Indiana many, many years ago, and some of them we don't know whatever happened to them.
Mhm.
So, and it depends on who you talk to. There's a trucking company here that goes by Reis, and other people go by Reis.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
Okay, so now you're married, and did you start a family right away, or?
yeah, we had 3 little ones of our own. Well, the first one lived 3.5 months, and then they had polycystic kidneys. Then there was nothing they can do for them or anything back in those days.
Mm-hmm.
But then, so after we found out what that problem was, well, we never did find out what caused it or anything, we ended up with, our children were adopted.
Mm-hmm.
So we adopted a boy and 2 girls.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And
Good for you.
so, yep, they've been a good family and doing good.
I should say. Now you needed a job. Here you were,
Yeah.
1,000 miles from Nebraska.
Well, that was the thing too. See, I came out here on vacation, and I was here about 2 weeks, and I finally said to Janet, I said, you know, I guess I'm going to have to go home and get back to work and everything. And I just made the comment, I said, you know, I said, if I can get a job out here, I might just stay. And she said, really? And I said, yeah, but I said, I got to go home and quit my other job and do whatever. I said, how about you going back west with me and meet my parents? And she'd just been on vacation. She said, well, I don't know. She worked for GE. She come home the next day and she said, I talked to my boss and he said he'd give me time off. So back in those days now, we just took off on a quick trip and drove straight through. You know, you didn't stop like they do today's world and all that. It was a whole different thing. But so I went back and quit my job out there, and we came back, and her uncle worked at Cincinnati Millicom. And he called and said, tell me to come over. I went over there and got an interview and got hired, worked over there, and worked there for about 6 months or so. And I said, you know, I got to do something else. So, you know, they had that apprentice program, the machinist apprentice program.
Mm-hmm.
So went up and signed up for that. Well, they didn't want to let me. There was another guy my same age that had been in the service. And they said, well, we really don't know if most of the guys that come in here come in out of high school, and we was like 25 years old then. They said they didn't think that we'd go through the school and finish. And finally convinced them that I knew I needed something else.
Sure.
So they finally agreed and went through the training. Got out of there and worked in engineering for about another 6 months or so, and I had an opportunity to go to Procter & Gamble. So I took a job over there.
Oh.
But then my boss at the mill over there, he says, well, what are you going to do? And I says, well, I hired in as a clerk. And he says, a clerk? He says, you're in engineering. I said, yeah, but they pay me more than you do. So then I was over at the mill for, over P&G for, I don't know, another 6 months or so. And they was in the process of hiring more machinists. And I went down and said, I one.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was basically my career at Procter & Gamble's.
That was
machinist.
Ivory Dale.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Spent my whole time down in there.
I'll be darned. And you were a machinist?
Machinist maintenance, yeah.
Maintenance.
Mm-hmm. We did both.
I should say.
We tore down, put together, and designed, and that was the neat part about the job, because you weren't just doing one little thing. You designed, you built, and the things you made better fit because you was the one that's going to have to make it work.
Sure. And you're using your own brain and
Yep.
your education and
So
everything.
it was. No, I've had a good life, really.
Well,
good life.
That's just wonderful. You live over on the west side of town.
Yep.
What neighborhood?
Well, they call it Montford Heights. I don't know, you're familiar with North Bend and Cheviot?
Sure.
I'm right back off of there,
Oh,
about
right.
2 miles off of North Bend, or 74 in North Bend.
Well, did you join any veterans organizations?
Well, I'm a lifetime member of the VFW,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I'm not too active here in Cincinnati like I should be.
Well, you know.
They've got a couple little groups, but they're really not doing anything. They're just.
Mhm.
But,
Yeah. How about your outfit? Was it the kind of an organization that there was a lot of camaraderie? Have you kept up connections with any of your fellows?
Tried there for a couple years. I wrote some letters and everything, and never ever really got any
Yeah.
correspondence back. And you just finally kind of give up on it.
Sure, and it's
And-
kind of all withered up with fellas.
Of course, when I go back Nebraska, I still call that home, even though I've lived out here twice as long as I lived there.
Yes, I know.
I see some of the boys out there and everything.
Right,
And
right.
of course, my oldest brother, he was always big time VFW man. He was commander in chief and everything for many years. So that's how I got connected with the VFW and everything.
Oh, I see. Now, how about your children? Raised and educated here in Cincinnati?
Yeah, my son's well, he was in commercial plumbing until the bottom fell out a year or two ago.
Hmm.
The last job he had was up there at Mount Airy High School, or elementary school in Coleraine. And last year he spent most of the summer just doing jobs on his own. But then he had the opportunity to get a job with an outfit out of Columbus. They was establishing a warehouse down here, and they have a contract with Home Depot. He installs all the hot water heaters and any other kind of plumbing that they want done. And he finally said, well, you got to take care of the family. He didn't want to leave the hall down there, but you got to do your own thing.
Mm-hmm.
The oldest daughter, you don't want her to visit you because she works for the tissue bank. So when she visits you, she's going to be taking skin, bone, and tissue that
Wow.
you no longer exist.
For heaven's sake.
Yeah, so that's what she does.
Uh-huh.
And the youngest daughter, she messed around in all kind of sales and everything, but she unfortunately had a stroke when she was 37, about 7 years ago.
Oh, my goodness.
So she's basically paralyzed the whole left side.
Mm-hmm.
And the worst part about it is she can't see out of the left side of either eye.
Mm.
So everything she sees is to the right. So
Mm.
makes it a little difficult for her.
Oh, yeah, I should
But
say.
otherwise,
Well,
they all done real good.
Well, she's lucky that she has you and you to help and watch over. The situation, of course, these days is with the veterans. We're all getting older and older and older, and it's harder for us to relate to the younger people these days.
Mhm.
Do you speak to groups or anything like that? Do you do anything?
Haven't really ever got involved in
Mhm.
that sort of thing either. But I think it's great to those people that do. You probably know who was the guy with Doolittle?
Uh-huh. Tom Griffin?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, he's a great.
Isn't he
I
great?
love to hear him. I've heard him 2 or 3 times, and I'd go
Yes.
listen to him again.
Isn't he a great guy?
He is.
He
That's
is.
great.
Yeah, he lives over there on School Section Road.
Yeah, he's over in that territory.
Yeah, right. As a matter of fact, we've interviewed him here and also out at our Warbird Museum out at Claremont County Airport. Are you familiar with that?
Not
Have you
real.
heard of it or anything like that? It's where we restore World War II aircraft.
Oh, okay.
And make them to fly. It's a wonderful thing.
My good buddy would be interested in that. He's a plane man.
Oh, really?
He really loves these planes.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting too. Do you have any interest? Are you a historian, or do you read a lot, or
Not
play golf, or what?
No, I used to play golf. I finally decided that was taking up too much time and said, "The
Right.
heck with it."
Right.
Used to play with a bunch of guys from our church. They start out, we'd play on Monday mornings, and then it got to play, well, let's play tomorrow, and then it got to 2 and 3, 4 days a week. And about 6 years ago, they said, well, it's about time to get ready to go in the spring of the year, you know. And I said, I'm not playing anymore.
Oh, my
And he
goodness.
said, oh, yeah, you. And I said, watch. I said, I haven't played since. No, I wood carve, and I volunteer for the Hamilton County Park Board.
Well, good for you.
And if you want to stay, I think I've been retired, 19 years, and I've never had a dull day yet.
Yeah,
I said, if you want to be busy, you can just stay busy.
absolutely.
And I got a flower garden up at our church. It's probably as big as this room or better, which I got volunteered for about 15 years ago, and I keep waiting for somebody else to take over, and they haven't done it yet.
You've done such a good job, nobody.
Yeah, evidently. They said, well, you're the flower person. I said, well, not really.
Oh, that's great.
But no, there's just so many things to do. And
Well, you know, and you've hit it right on the nail head, because if you keep your mind busy, then your body will be busy, and you have interests that you can do. And unfortunately, so many people just kind of sit back and do nothing. But it's very important to keep busy.
no, we have a wood carving group that meets on Wednesdays up at the Green Township Senior Center. We probably got 40, 50 members.
No kidding.
There's usually about 30 or 35, you know, with the people that are either
Sure.
sick or gone. But it's a good pastime.
Right, it is. That's a wonderful thing. Well, that's that addresses again your background and your interest and your artistic ability, because carving is an art, and that's just wonderful. Well, listen, anything else come to mind that you want to relate for your fans and your family?
Not really.
Well, you got the platform here.
Just want the economy to get back in shape again. If I could do anything about that.
Oh, yeah. Don't we all?
Yeah.
I should say. Well, Wilbur, it's just been a wonderful experience to get to know you.
Yeah.
And,
Well, like I said, I didn't have any really a great story. It's just, like I said, my 2 years in the service, I've always figured has been a great education, great experience. I've never ever looked back and said, oh man,
yeah.
you know, it's you know, I've seen country I'd never ever see, and
Oh, my goodness.
done
yes,
things, and
I
it just,
should say.
it was,
Well, and
Good.
the important thing is, as a, I like to say, a citizen soldier, you served your country, you answered the call, and we are all very proud of you, and we thank you for what you've done. We're lucky to have you here in Cincinnati, and it's been a great pleasure.
well, thank you.
Keep
It's
well,
been
and
wonderful talking with you.
I hope our paths will cross again.
There you go.
There
I
we
sure
are.
do.
Okay, October the 7th, 2005, and I will be interviewing Wilbur Reis about his Korean War experiences. We are at the home of Edward and Margaret Lostro at 3738 Yellowstone Drive, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45251. Present are Wilbur and Janet Rice and Edward and Margaret Lostro. Margaret is the interviewer. Wilbur, would you like to tell us about your life before, while you were in the Army, and a little bit afterwards?
Okay, we'll start out here a few years before I went into the Army. Of course, I was born and raised on a farm in Nebraska. You know, one of them old boys that had to milk cows and all that sort of thing. But after I got out of high school, I had hay fever pretty bad, so I worked for the state of Nebraska Highway Department as a heavy equipment operator. And then come along, September 52, or a little bit before that, I got this request in the mail from my neighbors and good old buddy U.S. government that they invited me to spend some time with them in the service. I left by bus about noon on September 4th, 1952, went down to Omaha for a physical. That's always a new experience for, if you haven't been there. Those days you just kind of stood in line with a little bit of nothing on and maybe a needle or two hanging out your arm. And after the physicals, naturally they said we was all really good shape, so they put us on another bus and we headed for Camp Chaffee, Arkansas for basic training. Of course, this is in the fall of the year, and we had some very hot weather, but when we got ready for bivouac, it happened to have about 6 inches of snow, so we got to sleep in the snow in our little pup tents and all that, which was a nice experience. One of the things in basic training I can remember was always kind of unique. I always thought we had bayonet practice. And guess what? It was Sergeant Slaughter that taught us how to use the bayonets. I thought that was a great name to go with that. During basic training, towards the end, we had the opportunity to sign up for different schools, and I signed up for paratroopers and was looking forward, took the test and everything. But there again, Uncle Sam had other ideas. We had our basic training and finished that. Our whole company was designated to go to Korea. So after that, of course, I got 30-day leave to go home and spent that time. Of course, they wouldn't let us go home before Christmas. In those days, we had to stay there for Christmas and missed the first Christmas at home, but we had the time off in between and wasn't doing much plane riding then either, so I had to get back on a train to go to Seattle, Washington. And I don't really remember how many days it took to get there, but it was a long ride. Spent a day or two in Washington doing whatever we had to do, whatever clothing they assigned us and give us, and anyhow, we left Seattle about 1 o'clock one afternoon, beautiful sunshiny day, and by evening, before the sun went down, we'd hit some very rough water, and we was on the Marine Lynx, which is, to me, I call them wash tub ships. Anyhow, this little ship we was on, it was rocking and rolling, and my oldest brother had told me, who had been in the service, make sure you eat no matter what you do, because if you don't, you're going to get sick. Well, since we had just been out in the water for a short time, we had some sick boys that evening already, and the next morning I did miss breakfast because I went up to go to breakfast, and we had to go up on deck, and the waves were coming over so strong you couldn't get through. But fortunately, I did not get sick because I didn't miss another meal. I'd get down there to the mess hall, and if you didn't hang on to your tray, when the boat would toss, the tray would just go right on down the line, and you had to grab it. But anyhow, we had some very six green-looking soldiers. I mean, and unfortunately, they was bunked 6 people high, so if that poor guy on top was sick, look out below. And as I said, it was a slow boat to China. Well, it really wasn't to China, it was to Korea, but it took us about 30 days. We finally arrived at Incheon, Korea, late in the afternoon, and by the time they got us all loaded off, because we had to take landing crafts in, you couldn't take the ship into, there was no docks. So we had to load out that way and got about half wet getting in that way. Anyhow, we got in, it was getting dark already, and it was cold. Of course, it's in February. Over there, it was 1st of March. And they got us all lined up, and of course, we knew we were in line for food. Well, we didn't get food. We got our issue of Mickey Mouse insulated boots, which came in very handy in the cold weather. But
we still didn't have any food, and then we finally got into another line, and we didn't get any warm food. We did get our sea rations. From there, we loaded onto a train. I might say that we had no windows or no heat, so we traveled all night and the next day, and since we had cold rations, no way to heat them, the beans were okay, but the cold sausage and gravy weren't exactly what you call a gourmet meal. But, you know, we survived. I mean, that's not the worst in the world. Anyhow, after traveling all day and all night, we finally got to, well, if you pronounce it Yanchan or Changyang-ni Railroad Center, where you stopped, the train stopped, there was absolutely nothing left there. I mean, that was just a designated spot where there used to be a city, but that's where we was assigned to the 7th Division, 48th, 105 Hauser Artillery Battalion. My first 30 days there we was assigned to the gun battery, and we lived in the bunkers, which were built out in the banks and with sandbags. Sounds kind of crude, but they were very warm. You know, I mean, they was insulated. You just sweep out the dust off of the floor in the mornings, because the floor was dust. It was ground. But we'd sprinkle it down and didn't have no problem. Anyhow, I had to spend the first 30 days, I was really assigned to service battery, but you had to spend time on the guns, which are the 105 Hausers, and that's a great experience. Kind of makes you hard hearing. That's why I can't hear, huh? But right before my 30 days was up there, our battery was going to make a move, and the day we got ready to move, our sergeant of our battery was going to rotate to go home. So all of a sudden they said, "Hey, we don't have a truck driver." And I said, "Well, I drove trucks. I can drive it for you." So I volunteered, and believe it or not, they had me driving the truck. Well, our battery, our section, that's when they was putting all the new GMC vehicles that used to have, Jeeps, trucks, and everything, and all the other groups had new GMCs, except we had an old International, which was no problem because we had our old International trucks that we drove for the State Highway Department. Anyhow, it was a March, and it had warmed up, and the roads going up the hills, I mean, they were just bulldozed out, and they had these different soft spots in them. It was thawing out, and for some reason, of course, when you moved, you pulled your 105 Hauser behind you, and you loaded up your gear, everything that your men could get on the truck, because that was all you had, your property. So you had to take care of it. So anyhow, my little story was that the GMCs, these guys with these new trucks, couldn't make it up the hill. They'd start up and they'd get in this bog hole and back down, and they didn't know what to do. So I finally told the one lieutenant, I said, "You know what? I can make it up through here with this old International." And he kind of laughed at me, and I said, "Well, you know, green kid, new kid on the street, I'll probably get in trouble." But anyhow, I took the truck and all my load, and I went up the hill, and I ended up backing down and pulling everybody else up the hill. So I don't know whether that helped me or whatever. But anyhow, after we got through that, the following week, then I got transferred back to service battery, and was driving a truck there again, hauling ammunition and everything. And shortly after I got back there, for some reason, the ammo train commander come up to me one day, and he says, "How would I like to be his Jeep driver?" And I said, "Well, sounds good to me." And I always kind of laid that on to the fact that going back and pulling them other guys up the hill put a feather in my hat, I guess, or pat myself on the back. But anyhow, that was a great job driving the Jeep. But one of the things that always kind of amazed me too is before we left the States, there was a rule that you had to have GI glasses before you left. And the other thing was you don't drive any government vehicles without a GI license. Well, I went in the service and I came out of the service. I didn't have GI glasses. I didn't have a GI driver's license, but I drove everything they had. Driving the Jeep was a great experience because, unfortunately, the Chinese chose rainy days and evenings. That was their way, I guess, harassing us because we'd always have incoming rounds. Well, that meant we had to go out on ammo runs. And that was driving with blackout lights in the rain. And your roads over there were just bulldozed along the hillsides. So you didn't have a whole lot of room, so you had to be very careful. But that was a good job. And then during this session, a time when we was having quite a bit of problems with the Chinese and everything, for some reason we got this new lieutenant colonel, and he decided to move us to a new location. Where he got his schooling from or his training, we don't really know, but he moved us on the open side of a hill or valley, which means you're on the open as far as the Chinese. They could see us. And we hadn't been in there. We probably get in there about 10 o'clock in the morning. By noon, we had incoming rounds, and we had incoming rounds most of the day. We were supposed to all dug in our foxholes and everything, and I told the ammo train commander I really didn't believe in digging in on the open side of the hill, and since we was getting ready to go out on an ammo run and everything, he says, don't worry about it. And of course by that evening it was raining, so yes, we were out on the road again, but by 4 o'clock that afternoon we lost the whole mess crew there by an incoming round. While we were out that evening, they moved our battery out of there to a different location. But in the meantime, we had to get a new mess crew in because we didn't have any. But that's one time I guess I kind of refused to do what I was ordered to do, but I figured it was a good reason and it came out okay. Moving right along there, shortly after that, I think comes up July or so, that's when the armistice was signed, or whatever they wanted to call it, the truce. You know, we weren't in a war, we were in a conflict. That was kind of a neat experience in a way, because the last night that it was legal to fire rounds, why all the commanders had a little contest to see who could fire the last round and still be within the requirements of the government and not fire after the 12 o'clock or whatever I don't remember what the time was. That particular night, the valleys were so filled full of smoke you couldn't hardly see in front of your face because of this little test they was running and game they were playing. But it was two things. They was getting rid of ammunition, which they'd had to move. I'd always said there was probably somebody getting injured or killed from that because you don't know where them rounds always land at. After that, it was kind of a whole different game. I mean, you did a lot of cleaning up. They had a lot of ammunition they had to move and all that sort of thing. But right that particular time, I had the opportunity to take over the supply room, which was a good job. It had a big tent and everything and had all the supplies, and I was in charge of everything in the battery. Here I was, a 21-year-old kid and in charge of the world, I thought, because the captain I had said, you're in charge, and whatever you want to do, you sign, and sign my name because it's okay. You're taking over. Since the truce was signed, they had started sending in Quonset huts for us. And I was lucky enough that they built me a Quonset hut which was insulated. I had my storeroom there. I had my living quarters there. I had a ROK, one of the ROK soldiers that lived there with me, and another guy that was my assistant. So, I mean, we kind of had it made in the shade, compared to living in bunkers and then moving into tents, and then by having our own quarters in the storeroom was neat too, because everybody else was holed up in tents with, about 30 people in those tents. And so I kind of had it made, and I can't really complain. It was, I had a good life there, and enjoyed being the store supply sergeant. By that time, then it was time for me to rotate and come back to the good old USA, and luckily again I got on one of those ships, the General MSC MiGs, and it wasn't any bigger than the General Lynx or whatever they called that other ship I came over on. It moved about as swiftly. Unfortunately, I arrived back in the States April the 6th. If I'd have got out to the States before the 1st of April, I'd have got out in 21 months. So I stayed there 24 months. We came back into San Francisco. We were processed through, again loaded on the trains, and we spent 2 days, almost 2 days and 2 nights, traveling from there to Camp Carson, Colorado. And it was just a long ride, because, it seemed like it was one of those cattle runs or milk runs, I guess we called it, because every little town that train would stop and they'd have to unload this and they'd have to load that, and we didn't think we was ever going to get to Camp Carson, but we did. We got there one afternoon and processed through, and naturally they wouldn't let us head for home. We had to wait till the next day. Some of us went into town that night, and I won't say who, but some of them had a little bit too much to drink, so there we were the next day, hot sun processing, and we know better now. We should have stayed out of town, but we didn't. Anyhow, we went home, and then I had my 30-day leave again, and had to end up back in Camp Carson, Colorado for the summer. Well, here I was, a supply sergeant. They really didn't have anything for me to do, but I had to stay for 24 months. I guess I have to say that the good thing about this whole thing was on Sundays, a couple of my buddies would ride the bucking broncos up at a dude ranch, and we'd go up on Sunday mornings, and that particular day we passed this Ohio car which had 4 young ladies in it. I blew my cow calling horn, which I had on my car, which made quite a sound. We went on around and went on up and watched the guests go on for the morning ride. It ended up these 4 gals were coming to the same place, only they were too late to go out on the morning ride. So as we were sitting at the corral fence there, they walked over and started a conversation, and we ended up seeing these ladies about 4 times that week. And when they left, I said to Janet, I said, are you going to write? She says, well, if you write, I'll answer your letter. So, lo and behold, we communicated for a year, and the next year I came to Cincinnati, Ohio, and I ended up being married, and I've been here ever since. So that's been over 50 years ago. So I can say that maybe my Army days weren't too bad, and maybe if they hadn't kept me for 24 months, who knows where I'd have been or what I'd been doing. So things don't always turn out for the worst. And no, I had a very good service time, I would say. It was a great experience. I learned a lot, and it's just good days. I don't want to do it again, but I would if I had to. I'd do it in a heartbeat. And that's about the end of my little story.
Okay.
Oh, one thing I did do when overseas there after the conflict was over, they had some different shows that came in, and I was very lucky. I got to see Marilyn Monroe, and I was up close enough. I got some nice snapshots of her, and she put on one heck of a show for us. I mean, no matter what they say about her, she's a heck of a show gal. And So that was kind of a plus too and everything. And that's about all I got.
You had told me about they were almost like sod houses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were built into the bank, and with, you cut it out and you build it up with the sod, and then most of the time the fronts would be built up with sandbags for the front of it, and you had a door in it that way, and then over the top we'd put timbers, and that would be all sandbagged about 3 or 4 deep, 5 deep or so. So they were pretty safe living and very comfortable. In fact, they were cool when it was hot and warm when it was cold.
Okay, well, that sounds good.
But like I said, I spent 2 years in the service, and even in basic training, I spent 1 day in KP and never spent another day KPing all the time I was in the service. And how I lucked out on that, I'll never know. So it was, like I said, good time. Well, not a good time, but educational.
Did any of your experiences there in Korea or in the service help you out towards your eventual occupation in life?
Well, I did use a GI Bill for my apprentice program, training that way. My experience as far as being in the service, no, it probably didn't really help me that way, except a lot of good knowledge and a lot of growing up and, responsibility. But I did use the GI Bill for my schooling.
Where was your main, what did you work at in your main job after the service?
Well, I was first started out over at Millicon as a expediter, expediting parts and stuff down in the shop and everything, and that's when I realized that, hey, if I'm going to get ahead in this world, I need something else. And they had a apprentice program up there in their plant, which was one of the top programs in the world. I applied up there. I and another young man I didn't know before either had been in the service like I had, and they really tried to talk us out of going into that school, because most of the guys come out of high school into that, and they thought, well, at our age, being about 25 at that time, and both of us being married, that we wouldn't stick it out. But we finally convinced them, and of course, that was probably the best thing that ever happened, because that's what ended up getting my job at Procter & Gamble and being a machinist maintenance person there for 30 years. So, yeah, it all kind of fit together somehow.
And you retired from there?
I retired from there in 1990, so believe it or not, I've been out there almost 15 and a half years. And it gets better every day.
Isn't that the truth?
Yep.
Well, this has been very interesting, and I do want to thank you, Webb. Webb is what I know Wilbur as. We have been friends now for, 30 plus years?
Oh, yeah, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Spent a lot of time camping when the kids grew up.
That's right.
Oh, the one thing I did see, I was up around Old Baldy. Of course, that's where these 2 towns are, which has nothing to do with this, but...
Okay, well, thank you very much. And I'm sure your information will be very helpful.
Hey, hope so.
Well, I'm sure so.